the IO album from Peter Gabriel, the first fresh studio material from Peter Gabriel in 21 years. So, we're going to talk about this album, which was just released in physical form just a few days ago. The songs themselves have been out on YouTube in digital form for many months, but this particular video, we're going to talk about the actual vinyl listening experience and the record as a whole, right, as a composition. So, very interesting artwork. We have Peter himself here on the cover, and then we have some stuff here on the back that we're going to go into here in a minute. And then if you open it up, a lot of cool eye imagery, blue eye imagery. I don't know if that's Peter's eye, if he's got blue eyes, kind of like mine, but very cool. And so IO is the name of the album. And as many people have pointed out in reviews, IO can stand for input output, right? Well, when I saw IO and I knew that he had like moon themes on, like he was releasing the songs digitally on each new moon, I believe it was, or full moon, that is. So I also noted that Io is the name of one of Jupiter's moons, the third largest Jupiter moon. And the back cover artwork happens to be a picture of the surface of Io, Jupiter's third largest moon. It also happens to be the most volcanically active body, geologic body in the entire solar system, Io. Kind of interesting stuff, right? So, yeah, IO just came out, and again, I wasn't a big fan of the previous two albums from Peter Gabriel that came out, I believe, in the late 80s and early 90s, Us and Up, I believe they were called. I did enjoy the first 5 studio albums from Peter Gabriel, to include So, and also, just a few years ago, I finally went through the back catalog of all the Genesis albums with Peter Gabriel, and that's some really good stuff, really a very diverse span of music that Peter has done. The really cool thing about Peter Gabriel, though, is that he kind of crafted a voice as a young vocalist that he was able to maintain. And though it's changed a little bit through the years, it's immediately recognizable as Peter Gabriel's vocals, and they are just stellar, on point, very rich. I mean, it's Peter, and he hasn't changed much at all. Just as good a vocalist, range, emotion, everything is just as good as it has always been on this record. So there's that. Now, I'm not going to go through every song or talk about every song, but I'm going to talk about a few notables that I did enjoy. And the first track has to be mentioned, of course, Panopticon. So Panopticon, what I immediately noticed about Panopticon is that this record has a very good drum sound, just very rich, very well mic'd, very well engineered drum sound. Now, the cool thing about this record is that you're instantly jumping in and recognizing it as Peter Gabriel's work. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that not only is it Peter Gabriel, but he's basically had the same backing band since which came out in 1986. So he's obviously established a studio rapport with these studio musicians. So we got Tony Levin on bass, Manu Katchke on drums, and David Rhodes on guitars, and of course Peter Gabriel covering the gamut with doing the vocals, programming, keyboards, piano, and of course, my personal favorite, the synths. So anyway, Panopticon, again, immediately notice a very rich drum sound, and the thing I like about this song is that it is the right mix of a good core pop song, but there's enough atmospherics and electronics and kind of experimentation on top of a really core, good rhythm section that this just overall, to me, stands out as the top track on the overall album. So I guess I revealed a little bit right off from the beginning that Panopticon is my personal favorite track, but I feel it's one of the strongest tracks on the album, and we'll go into what I think is the other strong tracks on the album. But the really cool thing about Panopticon, as it goes into the second track, Playing for Time, Panopticon is, comes in kind of punchy. It's got a good rhythm section. You got a good feel for it. It's got a groove, but then going into Playing for Time, it kind of goes into one of Peter Gabriel's more softer, rich piano textured things that's a little bit more emotional. Now, one thing I will note, when I review music, it's really has to do with the composition and the overall work. I don't really get a lot into the lyrics. So if a song doesn't necessarily speak to me musically, it might speak to others lyrically, but I might find it kind of boring. That's just me. But we're going to move on from there. I have to say, going into side B, we had the song Four Kinds of Horses, IO itself, and Love Can Heal. Great songs all in themselves. Nothing particularly memorable to me. But again, I've only gone through this record 3 times now. I should have mentioned that from the beginning, but I've listened to this record 3 times. So same thing that goes into side C, if you are the first side of the second record. Again, really good overall tracks, but nothing that really stands out as notable to me. Now, that changes a lot when we get to the final side of the final record, or side 2 of record 2, or side D, if you will. 3 very interesting and I think very cool tracks on side D. And really, This Is Home, which is the first song on side D. A very interesting intro. I like the atmospherics of the song. It's got a very typical, I'd say, pop groove to it, but with that interesting intro and the atmospherics, it really is a very decent overall love song. I think This Is Home is a great love song. It's probably the perfect love song on this record, and really it's just a very general song with very general lyrics that can be applied to any situation involving love, and I really do love a good love song like that. So This Is Home, I'd recommend you listen to it. I might share it later. So that brings me into And Still. And Still, I thought, was a very cool track. It's got a very mellow beat, very mellow vocals, very chill. I like the piano touch that comes in near the end and the outro. And really, I love this track a lot. And it's got a very kind of late 90s, I want to say trip hoppy, almost not Portishead, but kind of a 90s trip hoppy theme to it. And that is And Still. But that brings us to the very last track, Live and Let Live. Now, here I want to talk about Live and Let Live a little bit, because Live and Let Live, I'm going to go ahead and say, is probably the second, maybe overall strongest track on the record. It's not my second favorite song on the record, but it probably is the second strongest as far as a, let's just say, radio ready hit, if you will. The thing about Live and Let Live is that it really feels like a final song. Like if, and I'm not saying Peter Gabriel's going anywhere. I mean, he's not that old, right? And maybe he's got another album on the way for all I know. But Live and Let Live really could be a final song for a record, a final song for a career, parting words, if you will. And really, it really is a fitting song, I thought, for the time, considering the state of the world. Not to get into that, but just the lyrics themselves. And I said a minute ago I wasn't going to go into lyrics, but if you do go into the lyrics of Live and Let Live, he says many times, lay the burden down, lay the weapons down. It takes courage to learn to forgive, to be brave enough to listen, to live and let live. And I think that really, again, coming back to this being a final, kind of a good final track, not only is it a good final track if it were to be like the last song on an album, but if Peter Gabriel were to go away tomorrow, or if I was Peter Gabriel and I were to go away tomorrow, I would want that to be a fitting last final word, if you will, for the world, if you will. That being said, another great thing about Live and Let Live is that it bookends the album. I think we bookend both sides of this album, the first song being Panopticon, the last song being Live and Let Live. It really is 2 very strong tracks to bookend this album and really drive it home, give it almost a master stroke feel, if you will. And I think that's the one thing that I really take away from the placement of the songs on the album, because the placement of songs is a thing, right? The way you actually place the songs in the album is almost as important as the songs themselves in some cases. And he really chose the track listing very well for this album. Overall, great musicianship, great work, great songs from Peter Gabriel, I thought. And overall, I think this is an up note compared to the last 2 albums. I think it's a great record. I think it's really representative of Peter Gabriel's overall career and his work. And it's a great album, and I think he did a great job. So, good work, Peter. I loved it. So, I'm not going to give it stars because that kind of rating system doesn't seem to pan out too well for me. But overall, I did love it. So, I'm going to share some of the tracks on my YouTube channel a little bit later, just in the community section, just some of my favorites. And I might put some shorts in the section of me actually playing the vinyl, just so people can enjoy that. And with that being said, that's enough, but I hope you get a chance to go out and listen to this. I will mention that I did get the dark side. There was 2 mixes, a dark side and a bright side. There's actually more mixes than that. You can see the little blue thing that came with it. I chose to go with the dark side mix just because I'm kind of a dark side kind of a guy. But I'm glad I chose this mix based off of the other reviews that I've heard now. And while I initially was going to get both of them, I think I'm going to be fine with just the dark side. But that's it, my review of Io, the new album from Peter Gabriel. Happy listening.
Same rainbows do exist. The voice of